tip number 1 has to do with base setup. And your base setup with Mongol is very, very important. Okay? And there's a few things you want to quickly analyze when you load into a game, because you're going to have all of your villagers, 6 villagers, 5 sheep, Conq, town center, and Gur, all standing here idle, right? And so what you want to do before the 20-second mark is have all of this set up and in action. So you need to kind of quickly identify and know in the back of your head what the best areas to set up your town center are. And on this specific, I just randomly generated this map and got lucky. The best setup that you could have is a gold mine near the trees. So if I loaded the game and I saw that, I'm placing my town center right here. And the reason we do that is there are 2 safe resources, plus we'll move the sheep to the town center anyways. So we don't need to put the town center directly on berries or on deer back here or anything like that, because you'll have your starting sheep. So what I always do when I start out is I move the town center here, I send 1 villager to the Ovoo, and then I send the other villagers to chop trees. Now it's very important that you don't have your villagers block your town center from coming up. See how that works? You can move your sheep directly to the town center. And then you always use the speed arrow and send your Conq out. Okay? So those are a lot of different steps we did at the same time. Now watch me restart. Let's do it again in real-time motion. So we're going to identify where we're going to put our town center immediately. 1 villager to build the Ovoo, then the other villagers to the trees, then send the Conq out. So, town center, villagers to that tree, 1 villager to the Ovoo, Conq's out, move the Gur. See how it blocked for a minute, but I didn't block it too bad. And we're set up in 15 seconds. So I probably could have done better with getting my villagers to that tree. But the main thing here is that you're getting set up. And if you're lucky and you have a free Gur, you go put it on the deer or something like that. Okay? Now let's say that our goal was not next to our wood. We're just going to pretend this gold mine doesn't exist, right? Let's say the gold is out here or something, right? Not near the trees. And so then we have a situation where we have a wood line. You know, nothing's close together, essentially. We just have a wood line, some berries in between the 2 wood lines, the Ovoo and the gold. So you kind of have to make a snap decision there of, you know, you have no good options, and what do you go with? And there's kind of 2 areas that you could go. You could say, I'll just go by the safe berries and the wood line. And I think that's a good pick, right? Because you'll have safe berries and wood line. Or you say, I'll go to the smaller wood line, and it'll be, you know, near the Ovoo, protect the Ovoo, and it won't be super far away from the gold because the gold's out here. That's also a respectable option. What I would probably do is just throw town center here, move villagers to chop, send the Conq out, and then let's say our gold mine's right here, I just move the Gur out. And you see I got blocked there. And so if you followed this, let's say the gold mine's here, then you just, after your villager's done building the Ovoo, you move him to the gold, then you don't have to worry about that. So those are some basic tips on your base setup, which is very, very important if you play Mongol. And I highly advise that you practice this. Like, before you ever play a ranked game as Mongol, or even if you've been playing ranked and it's not clean, we need it clean. Like, there we go. So town center's up in 14 seconds. And I even had a little delay there. But that's exactly what you want. And the longer you take to set up, the slower you're getting your first villager out is the key. So you want that set up as fast as possible. So hopefully that base setup tutorial helped. And we'll move on to tip 2. Tip number 2 is building your Ovoo and rebuilding your Ovoo and the upgrades inside of the Ovoo. For Mongols, the Ovoo is a crucial part of your gameplay and pretty integral into what the Mongols do as a civilization. At the beginning of the game, when we talked about base setup, you always immediately build your Ovoo, with a notable exception sometimes being water maps if you go to immediately build a dock. That is one situation where you would skip your Ovoo, but for a land map, you will always build your Ovoo at the start of the game. There's not a good reason not to. The quick and dirty version of this is any military production building, barracks, archery range, stable, siege workshop, can use the stone that your Ovoo produces to double produce units. Okay, so if I just produce a normal unit, it makes 1 unit. If I use the double production, it makes 2 units. Pretty cool. So the Ovoo itself, it says 70 a minute right now. I think it actually, so it harvests 70 stone a minute in Dark Age, 100 in Feudal, 120 in Castle, 150 in Imperial. Constructing a new Ovoo will destroy the prior one, so you can't have 2 Ovoos at the same time. Okay? So, out of military production buildings, you can double produce units. If you build a pasture, it'll produce sheep faster within this Ovoo influence than if it could not. If you create a gur, which is the universal resource drop-off point for Mongols, you can actually get a tier higher economic research. So let's say your normal wheelbarrow gives carry capacity of villagers +5 and their movement speed increased by 15%. You can get wheelbarrow improved if your gur is within the Ovoo influence. So if you ever want to research better economic technologies than you can normally get, you put your gur within the influence of the Ovoo and you research those technologies. The Ovoo also has some specific technologies, and let me build a couple landmarks here to age us up. The Ovoo also has unique technologies, all of which are unlocked by the time you hit Imperial Age, but some of them are available in Feudal, some in Castle, some in Imperial Age. Most of these are very unique / specific to certain scenarios, so I wouldn't prioritize a lot of them. The 2 I would prioritize is Whistling Arrows, which is, we'll talk about the con in a minute, but increases con signal arrow duration by 5 seconds and range by 2 tiles, and then Superior Mobility, which allows packed buildings to move faster. So we can see this Deer Stone's pretty slow when it moves packed at 0.75. Then when I get Superior Mobility, it's as fast as a Men-at-Arms at 1.12. Which is pretty nice if you're moving your landmarks around to support your army. So every single technology that can be researched in the Ovoo also has an improved version on the right that you can use stone to upgrade. You'll generally see this happen with units as well. If I create a archer range and a stable, there are upgrades on the left-hand side, which are just normal upgrades, and then there is a unique upgrade on the right when the archer range is within the influence of the Ovoo. You can also see this with the stable and an upgrade for Keshiks. And if I move this stable out of the influence, then we'll see that technology is no longer available. And a requirement is the building must be within the influence of the Ovoo. So anytime your Ovoo basically uses all of its stone, for lack of a better term, it starts with 1200 stone when you create the Ovoo. Once it gets to 0, you can go create a new Ovoo and begin gathering a new stone mine. that's the quick and dirty on the Ovoo. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll move on to tip 3. Tip number 3 all has to do with the Gur, which is actually a very important building for the Mongols. And the Gur is the universal drop-off point for any resources for Mongols. So that's food, wood, gold, any type of food you can gather, right? Deer, berries, sheep, boar. It is a universal drop-off point. It functions as a lumber mill, mining camp, and mill. That also means that it has all of the economic technologies that you can research within this Gur. So, food gather rate, wood gather rate, gold gather rate, doubles the rate at which villagers chop down trees, which you don't really need forestry, wheelbarrow, carry capacity and movement speed of villagers, hunted meat gather rate, and then professional scouts. So the Gur is a very important building. Now, the thing to know about the Gur is it does cost 100 wood. So it does cost more than a mill or a lumber camp or a mining camp, which is generally 50, but depends on the civ. When your villagers are dropping off to a Gur, and let's say you want them to move to a new pack of berries, you can actually pick up and move a Gur using T, and then place it at the new resource deposit. So one of the important things to remember, and sometimes this is a bit hard to do when you're in the heat of combat playing the game, is you don't need to build a Gur at every resource depot, because you can move them. Okay, so a lot of the time what I do, because if you do try to move villagers over and place the Gur at the same time, the villagers will block the Gur from being able to place down. Let's say I just have 2 Gurs, and these guys are still working on the berries. I go ahead and just pre-place this Gur at the next resource deposit. And then when they finish up these berries, I'll just select all of the villagers, and I'll shift-click them. And so when they finish their berries down here, they'll walk up to the Gur and start collecting these berries. So we can see a similar thing. Now that I have villagers going to gather all of these berries, let's say, hey, I know they're going to run out of food at some point. I'll go ahead and just pre-move my other Gur over to those deer. And then when we run out of our berries here, I'll have my villagers go ahead and go collect the deer. And so this way, your Gur will already be placed down when your villagers are coming over here to hunt the deer. So you don't have the weird awkwardness of, hey, you know, my villagers are getting in the way of the Gur being placed down, because that can happen, and it can be quite frustrating. So as you age up, you'll get different economic upgrades if you've already gotten the base upgrade for horticulture, double broadaxe, and specialized pick, and all of those can still be selected with inside the Gur. So you really only want you know, ideally like 2 to 4 Gurs when you're playing. You don't want that many more Gurs. Like if you end up with 15 Gurs, you're just spending a lot of wood on resource deposits that you could move around instead of building new ones. The only real exception to this is when you're at 200 population. We could do this real quickly. You'll see that you can actually not place a Gur. So once I'm pop capped, I can no longer move Gurs around, and that's just how they developed the game. I'm not sure exactly why it works that way. So up until you're pop capped, you can move the Gurs around to different resources, but once you're capped, you will have to create new Gurs. And that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is how to best utilize the Conq, because the Conq is a unique unit specifically for the Mongols, and there's a lot of different things you can do with the Conq. So, the Conq has 4 different abilities and functions as a scout. And the most important thing for the Conq to do in Dark Age is scout and find sheep, and scout your opponent's base to determine what feudal landmark they're going up with, if you're doing any Dark Age aggression, where their resources, like their gold mine, are going to be. Gold mine, deer pack, those things. And we'll talk about Dark Age Rush a little later on. So, the Conq has a very limited ability in Dark Age to harass villagers, so unless you're already done scouting, I advise you just, finish your scouting, get as many sheep as you can, then if you scouted the whole map, feel free to harass some villagers with them. Now, as you age up, the Conq's stats will increase. So let's just build a deer stones here to see how this Conq stats increase. So he gains more HP and more damage. And as we age up, the Conq gets different abilities, okay? So the first ability, and you can see the radius out here, is the maneuver arrow. And so the Conq can fire an arrow that increases movement speed of all nearby units by 33% for 5 seconds. Notably, it does not affect villagers. So this is very useful if you're trying to trap an enemy, trying to run away from an enemy. You probably should always have your Conq with your army, and that's where he's going to be the most effective. The Conq is a really strong support unit for the army. So he can speed up the movement speed of nearby units for 5 seconds. Now if you had gotten the Ovoo upgrade, it would be for 10 seconds. The attack speed arrow, which if you have a lot of range units, pretty much everybody uses attack speed arrow, fires a signal arrow that increases the attack speed of nearby range units by 50% for 5 seconds. And this is a very, very strong ability when you're in a battle. Like, let's say you get in a battle, you have 20 crossbows or 20 archers, and then all of a sudden they're shooting 50% faster for 5 seconds. That's like having another 10 archers or another 10 crossbows in that battle. That's how effective that ability is. And then when you get the Ovoo upgrade and it's to 10 seconds, you're greatly increasing the damage output of your units. So attack speed arrow is probably my favorite out of all of the abilities. If you're not using range units, obviously you don't need to use it. But if you have a lot of range units and your Conq's nearby, when you really start going into a big battle, you want to trigger it. And ideally, you really don't want to take any big battles mid to late game as Mongols when you don't have your attack speed arrow. Or any arrow for that matter. If your Conq has the arrow on cooldown, you really want to wait to take a fight until the arrow is available. If we age up to Castle Age, the Conq gets a new ability called Defense Arrow, which fires a signal arrow that increases the armor of nearby units, including the Conq, by +2 for 5 seconds. It's a pretty cool arrow. It's just not nearly as good as the attack speed arrow. The armor would need to be increased by a bit more for that. But let's say like you were just using melee units like spears and keshiks or something like that. You could still pop this arrow and then you could deal with a ranged sword pretty effectively. So it's still a nice ability. I would generally rate them as attack speed arrow, maneuver arrow, and then defense arrow in tiers of, really good to not as good. And then the last thing that's really important and quite useful, which again we'll talk about later with raiding, is the Scouting Falcon. So, releases a falcon that provides vision in a targeted area for 30 seconds. A lot of the time I drop these over the enemy's wood line so I can see on the other side. And then that's on cooldown, just like these arrows. So if you use one of the arrows, all 3 of the abilities will be on cooldown for the next 90 seconds. So, the Conq is not to be messed with. He is quite strong, especially when he hits Imperial here, as we'll see. 450 HP. I didn't think that was going to do that. 450 HP, 2 armor apiece, and 24 damage. So, the Conq's one of the most important units then you need to utilize him effectively to be a good Mongol player. And that's tip 4. For tip 5, one of the most important aspects of Mongol gameplay are the landmarks. And the landmarks function quite differently, I feel like, than a lot of other landmarks that other civs have, because your landmarks can pack and unpack. You can move your landmarks. And that's something that's very unique to the Mongols. No other civ can do that. And so I kind of want to look through each landmark and talk through, if you select this landmark, that's kind of generally the strategy you're going with versus the other one. So when we look at Feudal Age, we have 2 landmark choices. One's Deer Stones, which grant access to Conq's Hunters, which is a unique unit at the archery range, and it instantly researches the YAM network technology, which increases unit speed within the Deer Stones or tower radius. It's pretty strong. The Silver Tree acts as a market. Production speed of traders increased by 40% with a 40% reduced gold cost. Also quite good. So I use Deer Stones more now, but I used to always use the Silver Tree. And generally, you kind of have 2 different paths. You could look at the Deer Stones as more of an aggressive path. You could look at the Silver Tree as more of an economic path. So these are kind of the 2 paths you're choosing. That's not to say that you couldn't just build Deer Stones and then build a market, which a lot of people, including myself, do. And that kind of, supersedes you needing a Silver Tree, even though the Silver Tree is a better market. If you're going to make Mangudai as a raiding unit, you need to select Deer Stones. I do not advise building Silver Tree and then making Mangudai. If you're going to make Mangudai, you select Deer Stones so that you can get the Conq's Hunter. Now, something important to kind of think about with these different landmarks is if you make a Silver Tree and it's a market, you go put it in the corner, you trade with the neutral market, that's easy. If we go Deer Stones, we don't really want the Deer Stones to sit in our base. You can do that, but that's not really what the Deer Stones is best for. If you want just the general radius in your base, you just build a tower and the tower will have the same EM network radius, okay? The Deer Stones, you actually want to pack up and move it out. Let's just say the enemy base is right here. You move it out in front of the enemy base. Because when you're attacking the enemy base, let's say like they have a wood line here, and their town center's out here, you can move quickly from each side of their base when you're within that Deer Stone radius, right? And one thing that's really important if you use Mangudai is Mangudai are actually a slow unit, okay? So they're infantry that can almost catch the Mangudai. They're 1.56. It's a slow unit. And so normally if you're raiding around the enemy base, they can catch your Mangudai, especially with horsemen, and kill them. And why it's important to have this Deer Stone within the enemy base radius is that Mangudai is now 1.8 movement speed. And so if this is near the enemy base out in front, you can quickly move Mangudai between resources to raid and attack, and really any units, spearmen, archers, horsemen, keshiks. But the Deer Stone's really effective at that, and that's where the Deer Stones come into great play, is when you're using the Mangudai. One unit that the Deer Stones unlocks is the Conq Hunter. And the Conq Hunter has a just passive ability, which increases the range of nearby range units by 0.5, 0.75, and then 1 in Feudal, Castle, and Imperial, respectively. So, Cav Archers gain +5. So Mangudai range, again, is quite small, but once they're with this Conq Hunter, it gets improved by 1. And this is in Feudal Age. Okay? So your Mangudai goes from 3.5 to 4.5 tiles range with the Conq Hunter, and they're much faster when they're in the radius of this Deer Stones. So if you're going to make Mangudai, Deer Stones is basically a must. Okay? If you're not going to make Mangudai, you can go Silver Tree and trade. That's totally fine. But with Mangudai, you need the Con Hunter to buff your Mangudai, and then the Deer Stones to be around to increase their speed. Because let's see the base speed of a horseman. Base speed of a horseman is 1.88. So with 1.8, the Mangudai can run away and shoot the horseman to death. Without this Deer Stone, when they're 1.56, the horseman will just catch them and kill them. So when we look at our Castle Age landmarks, because I had a question about, how do you know what to pick the other day, is, again, we have kind of what we had in Feudal Age, which is we have a military landmark and an economic landmark. And the Kulatai is nearby units within its aura heal 1 health every 1 second and gain an additional 20% damage. The Steppe Redoubt acts as a Gur, which is universal drop-off point, but gold dropped off at this landmark is increased by 50%, which is a very, very strong landmark. And I would say that the Kulatai is more situational. So again, if we're like pushing in with a siege on the enemy base, and we want to drop the Kulatai right here by the Deer Stones and have, 2 radiuses where our units are really buffed, it's great. Or if you're going, playing King of the Hill, and there's 1 sacred site in the middle of that hill, and you're going to go put the Kulatai beside it, the Kulatai is really strong. Like, Kulatai are great in situations where a fight's going to occur. You can always move it around if you need to, but if you build the Kulatai, you always want to take fights under the Kulatai. Very strong landmark. So generally I would take the Kulatai if I already felt good about my economic numbers. Let's say maybe I had some trade going, I hadn't lost many villagers, and I was being aggressive, pushing to take a fight and win. That's probably when I'm going for the Kulatai. When I'm going for the Steppe Redoubt, what I'm generally doing is that I probably don't have trade. I don't really want to get this landmark if I already have trade. Okay? Because if I have trade, I already have a lot of gold. You're generally going Steppe Redoubt when you don't have trade up. And so this is going to give you an economic advantage to get you back in the game. Because this villager's only picking up 10 gold, but he's dropping off 15. Let's see when we get Wheelbarrow. He's picking up 15 gold, now he's dropping off 23. So you're getting a lot more gold than your villager's actually picking up. And if you're, even in eco, you don't have any trade, you don't have good gold income, this is where the Steppe Redoubt could really jump you over the enemy, and then you just build a lot of units and you're happy with that. So the last 2 landmarks are the Khanate Palace and the White Stupa. Which, it's interesting because when I first started playing Mongol, I always chose Silver Tree, I always got Steppe Redoubt, and I always got White Stupa. And now I kind of do the opposite. And it's a military landmark versus what I would say an economic landmark, even though it calls it influence and technology landmark. The White Stupa is just a really good Ovoo. And you can build bombard towers in Imperial Age, so if you're planning on needing to build a lot of bombard towers, build the White Stupa. It's really as simple as that for me. The Cognate Palace can be very useful if when you hit Imperial, you are not at pop cap and are not going to soon be at pop cap. And let me explain that. The Cognate Palace spawns different armies, like Rus Knights, Rus Horse Archers, Rus Monks, Warrior Monks, Chinese Nest of Bees, Chinese Palace Guards, and they're all for free, even though it takes some time. And it spawns them randomly. So if you're going up to Imperial and you're already at pop cap, you have a huge eco, huge economy, these are never even going to spawn because you're at pop cap. Just get the White Stupa. But if you're going up to Imperial and your economy is not where it is, like let's say 70 economy or something, you're going to Imperial, that doesn't sound very good. And you're not at pop cap, you're at like 120 to 200. Get the Cognate Palace. It's going to spawn you a lot of Imperial armies. They have all their Imperial upgrades, and that'll give you a lot of use for it for a long time. So the Cognate Palace can be really useful. I've also seen some fast Imperial builds with it. But that's, again, kind of your military and your economic landmark. All of these landmarks, you can pick them up and move them, which is pretty awesome. So the kind of more situational landmarks like Deerstones and Kurulatai, you can always move them to the locations you need them. So that's tip number 5 on properly utilizing your landmarks. I hope that helps. And let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Alright, so our tip number 6 is that we always build towers within our trade as Mongol. And I'm not saying that as soon as you age up and build a market that you need 6 towers in your trade. Like, that's not what I mean. But as the game goes on, the opponent is going to focus on raiding your trade as Mongol. And you almost always need to trade as Mongol. They have good trade. So, it's important to build towers within that trade. I'm just going to move this so he stops bothering it. So, one of the big bonuses of having towers within the trade is that cavalry and traders near an outpost actually gain 15% speed for 10 seconds. So these traders are moving much faster, 15% faster, than your average trader. That's pretty good. Let's actually send a trader over here so we can see, once he gets out of the aura, what the typical speed of a trader is. So we want to put towers, and you can see this outside radius. We want to put them over a little bit overlapping in the radius, so that these traders are always moving through an aura that is giving them a speed bonus. If you clump up towers, it's normally best to do them near the markets. Like if you want to clump them up and put sprinkled towers or something like that to defend. So a trader not within the trade has a movement speed of 1. A buff trader has a movement speed of 1.15, which is actually faster than a men-at-arms. Very slightly. So that's an interesting statistic. Now, it does make them faster, but one of the most important things about having towers in your trade is when you're getting raided, you just go ahead and select them, and you garrison them in towers. So let's say you're getting raided by, a couple horsemen. You just take these traders, garrison them in the towers, and then they'll start shooting the raiding units. And then when you want to send them back out, you just send the traders back out. Problem solved. So that's pretty easy, right? Helps a lot with the defense of, you not always needing military units in your trade. Like, later in the game, you might need to have spearmen back there. But if you just have the towers up and they're just raiding with a couple units, you just garrison these bad boys real quick, shoot them down with the tower, ungarrison them right back to the trade, and you're good to go. So, what you have to do as Mongol is have towers in the trade because of the speed bonus for the traders itself, making them much more efficient, and then the protection for your traders to garrison and not waste your investment in them. And that's our tip number 6 on traders. Alright, for tip number 7, I guess it's less of a tip and more of a build order, but something you need to be able to know how to do as a Mongol player is to tower rush. If you do not know how to tower rush, and you don't know how to utilize it effectively, you're going to really struggle against civs like French, Jeanne d'Arc, HRE, Order of the Dragon. There are certain civs you should tower rush, and then there are certain civs that are a bad idea to tower rush. And so I'll kind of put that in the description of civs to tower rush, civs where you shouldn't tower rush. And I'm going to do just kind of a mock trial of a tower rush here to show you how it works. I do it in a lot of games. You could look through my videos and find examples of where I tower rush. I just can't think of any on the top of my head, but I almost always do it if I'm playing against a French or Jeanne d'Arc player. And I did go through my match history to pick some specific ones, but the match history is really weird and wasn't showing all the games. So, we're going to do a little mock tower rush here. And what you'll generally see is I'm just going to move to the wood here, get my Ovoo created. I'm going to send the Conq just directly out into the middle to the enemy base. Go ahead and find where the gold is. You can actually use your gur to just move around and pick up sheep early, but just for the ease of demonstration, I'm going to send it to the gold mine. So the main thing you want to do with your Conq is going to go ahead and go find where the gold is. So, you know, I used one villager to build the Ovoo, and then I have 5 villagers gather wood until I have enough to build a barracks. Then I just rally villagers on the sheep. It's really very simple. So sometimes you don't have to do this part, but sometimes when like some of my villagers finish dropping off wood, I'll go ahead and move them. Start gathering sheep. And I'm gonna go ahead and get a barracks built. He can build the barracks wherever. You're gonna walk the barracks to the Ovoo, so it doesn't really matter. So we know his front gold's right here. I just scouted the back of the base to see if he had a secondary gold, which he does. So like if I was playing against a real player, I'd be looking at this and I would be saying, okay, we'll tower this front gold, but I'm gonna have to keep scouting the back gold because he might move to that one, okay? That's important. Move the barracks out here to the Ovoo. Normally you'd use the Conq to go ahead and scout the rest of the map. If we're doing a tower, we want to build 5 spears total. So you'll double produce twice, and you'll single produce once. And you'll see I'll actually start moving my villager out here. Normally you want to do it right before the spears get produced, because the spears are a bit faster, but right at the same time is okay too. You normally build 5 spears because that's the perfect number where you can garrison 5 spears inside of an outpost. So the main thing is to deny gold on the French. Sometimes you can do towers to deny different resources. So ideally my villager would already be here. I kind of sent my villager out a little too late. And then you can just use the spears to burn the mining camp if they don't destroy it for the resources from burning. And since he's moved away, I'll actually drop an aggressive tower there. Normally you want to not be as aggressive with the tower, but if they're not going to protect you or attack you building the tower, you can be more aggressive. So I'm kind of cutting off this wood line and this gold, and I can see into his base. And because he's got a gold back here, I'm just going to send a spearman down there to see when he moves out to that gold. This is the tower rush. So this is pretty much it. This is all you need to do. It's not that crazy. Some people might pull villagers to try to burn the tower. If they do that and it's not yet constructed, like if it's close, you can just delete it and move back and build it again. If it's close to being constructed, a lot of the time you can kill some of the enemies with spears. And then once that's done, we'll just pull the villager back and boom. Garrison in there and we're solid. So that's how you do it. You know, if you wanted to follow up from this and like you wanted to age up, let's say, you know, we'll go silver tree and then you get enough, I'm just going to kill this guy because he's running through. And then you want to get enough wood, you can throw down a stable and follow this up with Keshiks, because this guy, normally what they'll do is go to feudal age and just start making archers. and you can follow up with Keshiks and attack them there. So that's kind of the basics of the tower rush, how you get a tower up. And it's really good for the vision on the enemy base. Once you hit feudal, you'll get arrow slits. It'll be even more effective just with range. And you'll have that kind of the Dark Age Spearman. If you had followed up with Keshiks and he moved back here, you could have hit him with Keshiks on this gold mine. And if he starts going to Spearman like this, you just start making archers when you hit feudal. So that's how you do the Dark Age Tower Rush. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. Alright, Conquerors, as a continuation of tip number 7 with the Tower Rush, we're going to see a real live Tower Rush here against another player that I played on solo ladder. So, move to caster mode, but you can see the opening phases of the base setup. I send 5 to the tree, I place my town center, I send the other villager to build the Ovoo. Conq moves out with the speed arrow, and then I start rallying villagers to the sheep. Ovoo guy will come back to the sheep. I'll gather enough wood for a barracks. I'll get the barracks placed, walk it out to the Ovoo, and then I'll rally guys out to sheep. And then once I've done all of that, I'll go for a tower rush on the Delhi player's base. So the gold's in a bad position to tower rush, so gold isn't as important for Delhi anyways. They have been going more Dome of the Faith and gold units and castle, so the gold's more important than it used to be. So could you technically come around this side and drive a tower here? Yes. What I decided to do was go for attacking the wood line with the tower. The wood line closest to his town center, and I figured I could always harass the second one if I needed to. That basically cuts him off from wood if I can get that up. So that's what I decided to go for. I can always harass the other side with Keshiks or units if I want to, right? You know, the tower's not going to cover the entire wood line. That's fine. Again, it's more to put pressure on this bottom area, and then I can always attack from the top side with units. So the towers are very rarely going to cover everything. They're not really meant to cover everything. So what this tower does, and actually let me just switch to my selected player. I've thrown down the eagle, and once I actually age up to feudal and get the arrow slits, then it'll put me in range to hit some villagers. So your tower's rarely going to be able to see over the wood line. What you want to do is place the tower, get arrow slits, and then use the Conq's eagle, and then you can see over the wood line to actually hit villagers. So the best thing you normally want to do, you can see he's going range, is, you know, you build spears in Dark Age, you age up with a stable and archery range. I go triple comp because, you know, if he builds archers, you'll have Keshiks to kill the archers. If he goes spearmen, then you can make archers kill the spearmen. So that's perfect, right? So he messed up here. I had used the Conq's eagle. I had gotten my arrow slits with the extra range, and I get 2 villager kills. Actually, you didn't get to see the second one. But that was an easy pick off with 2 villager kills. So I actually moved back into caster mode, and you can see that here. And now he's just sitting in his base trying to defend because I've got a position out here. So the follow-up to the tower rush is always important. I'm building Keshiks and archers. This has forced him into spearmen and archers. He did not go Ghazi raiders because I'm already making spearmen and have a tower. So that was already a win by forcing him off from building Ghazi raiders, because Ghazi raiders are really strong and don't want to have to deal with those. So this makes his army very limited mobility-wise, and I can just continually try to attack this spot. He actually does get up a tower, which is pretty nice. And kind of what we see here, because he has a slower moving army, he's got to move out here, start building walls around the sacred sites. And at this point, I have the tower here, which is applying pressure to the wood line. As these villagers continue to chop in, it'll be easier to shoot them and kill them with the tower. That's what we'll see. And because he's gone into Spearman Archer, his army's slower, I can catch it out on the field. And that's essentially what we'll see here. Since he doesn't have Ghazis, there's no counter-raiding potential. And then I'm able to come up here, catch the half the army out of position, and that's game. So that's the tower rush. Basically, you tower rush critical resources, and you follow that up with units. You want to play really aggressively. Keep the opponent in their base. If they move outside of the base, you want to constantly be scouting where their army's going, and then you want to catch their army on the map and destroy it. Hopefully, you can catch the army in piecemeals so that you don't have to fight all of it at once. And that's the quick clinic on tower rushes. What's up, Conquerors? For tip number 8, I want to talk about how to best use Mangudai and how to raid with Mangudai. And I'm not the Mangudai expert. Anyone who watches this channel knows that I'm generally a spearman, archer, Keshik kind of player, right? But there are times on certain maps and in certain situations I will go full cav, which includes Mangudai. And we're going to speed through the beginning here, through Dark Age. But we see we're playing a Roost player. It's important to kind of identify, I'm playing against a Roost player, where's the deer? And then how am I going to combat this? And on this specific day, I decided I would combat this with Mangudai. And the reason I was just thinking through that was that he was going to probably go like archers to defend, and I did make a stable just in case, that's what he did. But I figured horsemen, Keshiks plus Mangudai, I would have a decent shot at denying pro scouts. And I knew he had deer down here that he would go after. So I don't deny all of the deer here, but the main thing is I deny as many deer and delay it as much as I can, and I try to kill units and villagers in that process. So, I go ahead, I threw down a stable early to make some horsemen to get him out here. He actually ends up going spears because he saw me making horsemen, right? So he goes spears since I have horsemen. And then once the Mangudai get here, I can do some serious kiting. So he does go ahead and get one trip with the scouts. Then he pulls some more over here, get a scout kill. He gets another deer, he'll go for some more down here. So he's got a slow-moving force, and I've got the Mangudai that are starting to come in. And once I get the real Mangudai numbers up, I'll talk about how we do Mangudai raiding. Right now, we continuously feint like we're going to fight the enemy, and then we just pick off units over and over and over again with the Mangudai themselves. That's the goal. You just run around the slower force, you shoot them with Mangudai, and once you whittle the force down enough, like let's say you're able to kill enough spears and you have enough Keshiks, then you just take the fight and you finish it. So right now I don't have enough Keshiks, but I'll continually build these numbers. And what you're going to see, and I'll slow it down a little bit, is now that I have Mangudai, I just want to constantly harass this wood line. Like, I want no reprieve. I want to be on this wood line over and over and over again. And what's really nice is your Khan has the Scouting Falcon, but so does your Khan's Hunter. So you normally can't quite see past this wood line, but if you drop one of the eagles, you can have your guys shoot in there without needing to run all the way back here to see. You can see with the Scouting Falcon, and then you can surround. So let me actually just reveal map myself. And you can see that's my game plan. He's defending with units right now, but you can see I'm peppering some of the villagers. And now that his spears are low enough, I kind of think I can take this fight. He realizes I'm hitting his wood line. And with the Scouting Eagle like this, I can just continually run in, pepper units. And I just did a little small attack from the other side. So he did get a wooden fortress up. What I'm doing here is just using my main army to attack the south, and every once in a while I'll move in a unit from up top just to bother the villagers. even though he did kill my units there. So if you're ever playing against Mangudai in this situation, the wall doesn't particularly help you very much because you can just use Scouting Falcon and shoot past the wall. So again, he's trying to move out for a wall. We move over here with Mangudai, get a couple kills. Easy kills. If anything, you want to try to like pull out your units and fight and just get a tower up here with arrow slits to defend against this. You can see again, I can't see, but there's not enough spears now, so I just take a fight. And I see he's going out for more deer, so another scout kill, even though he has gotten most of these deer. And I know he's still on the wood line, so I hit Scouting Falcon. And you can see the wood wall does not stop me from getting to his villagers. Because I've got the Mangudai plus the Conq Hunter, which increases the range of the Mangudai. So I can actually get back there pretty effectively. So again, I'm just following his wood villagers. I can see everything because of the Scouting Eagle. It's not a surprise where he's going. I can see everything. Another 2 villager kills. And I just, you know, he chases me to the army, I just leave. You know, I kill a spearman and leave. That's the goal, right? And you just want to continually do this over and over. Trade behind it, which I have 4 markets up right now, trading. Take good fights when you can get them. And then again, Scouting Falcon. And he's actually cut in enough on the wood line now that Scouting Falcon, I can almost hit all of his villagers from where they're chopping wood. You can see killing more villagers. And this sucks to play against because I've had this happen to me. So that's pretty much how you want to attack with the Mangudai here. You know, if I fast forward it through this game, I'm trading a lot behind it. You go up to castle, you get your upgraded units, and then you make a push in. But essentially, there's all these villagers that are going to chop wood, right? And you just move from south to north, or you split it into 2 groups and you just do north and south at the same time. And you just repeatedly use Scouting Falcon, and you shred through the villagers that are on the wood lines. Like, if we look right now, I've killed 14 villagers in this game. And so, even though he's going to Castle Age, I'm really not concerned. I have built a big military lead. You can see the destroyed value and the army value. And he really can't get wood. Like, he cannot move to a wood line. He's got these 2 wood lines in the front. And even if he builds walls and towers, I just sit here and harass it with Mangudai and Conq Hunters. So that's how I play that. Now I want to show a second game, not to make this tip too long with the Mangudai. On Prairie, because I have actually been using Mangudai on Prairie a lot recently, and Mr. W is a conqueror. He's a good player. And he did a decent job against defending my Mangudai on this one. So let's go 8 speed. It's again a Mongol versus Rus, where I decided to go Mangudai. And this was a close game. I almost lost this one, but I was able to win it in the end. And again, for fast feudal, I'm just gathering gold and food. Then I'll start gathering wood so that I can place down a range and a stable. So sometimes I go stable range immediately. Sometimes I go double range. Just depends on what units I'm trying to make. I think here I'll probably go double range from what I remember. Oh no, I did go stable range. So he's already going to castle. Did you see that? I haven't even been able to get a unit to his base. He's already going castle. And so that's pretty tough to deal with, right? Like, the Rus guy's already clicked up before 6 minutes to go up to castle, and he hasn't gathered an ounce of gold. And we're actually on a map where he didn't go pro scouts either. So he just went straight to castle, no pro scouts, 1 hunting cabin as far as I know. And so, you know, what do you do in that situation? I decided to go Mangudai because I was looking at his base and thinking I could probably harass the gold, I could harass the wood, could even harass the berries. Like, he's going to have a hard time expanding on this map. That's what I was saying. And it's a wide open map. It's not easy to wall. The wood lines are small. And so I'm thinking, you know, hey, I could do a lot of damage if I make Mangudai. And that was always my goal here. You can see he's getting to straggler trees right now. And he can't move out of this wood line. So this game became interesting because he wasn't moving to the wood line. He was just getting food and gold. And I'll go caster mode here. You can see he just had a lot of sheep. Prairie has a lot of sheep. So he was just sitting under here. I missed that. Basically, he's building warrior monks out of the Abbey of the Trinity, and I'm chasing him down with units. He does get out here on the gold, which was my mistake. But now that he's on the wood and gold, I start coming out here and harassing with the Mangudai. You can see already 5 villager kills. He builds a tower. So he had to build 3 towers, but the tower doesn't necessarily protect you from everything. So for instance, if you put too many villagers on a wood line, they'll actually split out and try to chop away the entire thing. And so now I'm just running around trying to idle his resources over and over. And that's essentially what you want to do here over and over again. So now he's in this position where he's kind of defended tower-wise. I just keep idling his guys, but you want to go castle yourself right now. That's what I should do, is go castle and age up, get the better units, and then I can make like a proper dive. But again, you can see with the Mangudai just basically harassing the wood line, I've killed 14 workers. I got a couple on the gold, and then I just keep harassing this over and over again. He can't get wood, he's out of food. And he's really just getting gold through the relics he was able to get, and because he's Roos with his 1 hunting cabin. So he actually ended up, we played this game for a long time. He actually ended up doing quite well in this game, and I was able to eke out a win. But that's kind of what you want to do. You build those Mangudai. I go primarily Mangudai, and I make in some Keshiks in case I need to fight against things like knights, like have a front line. And then you just repeatedly use Scouting Eagle on the wood line, pepper the villagers that are there, and any other resources that they've moved out to. So hopefully with your Mangudai rating that helps. The key is, if you're going to make Mangudai, you build deer stones. You have to have deer stones. You get at least 1 Conq hunter in there, probably 2, because 1 might die. And then you're set with your Mangudai. You get your range damage upgrades, and you're ready to destroy some villagers. So hopefully that helped, and good luck with your Mangudai rating.